Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. As Operation Epic Fury escalates across the Middle East, Ukraine is stepping into a pivotal new role. The rise of the Iranian Shahed drone has upended the economics of modern warfare. While traditional interceptors cost millions, these low-cost drones can overwhelm even the most advanced systems. In just 5 days, Iran has demonstrated this tactical shift with over 1,000 drone attacks and hundreds of missile launches. In response, the U.S. and Gulf states have turned to Kyiv for expertise. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirmed that Ukraine has deployed interceptor drones and a specialist team to help defend the U.S. bases in Jordan. Joining us to discuss is William Dixon, Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute, a specialist in cyber and international security. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we've seen traditional air defense systems struggle with the sheer cost-to ratio of intercepting $20,000 drones with million-dollar missiles. And how is Ukraine's interceptor drone technology specifically solving the sustainability crisis?
Well, what we've been seeing in Iran is one of the most important developments in modern warfare, which is the traditional air defense approach, which was deploying highly specialist, highly advanced, but ultimately expensive technology to intercept ballistic cruise and jet fighters, has been completely overtaken by drone warfare. And what we've been seeing in the opening of Operation Epic Fury is the GCC countries really expend the majority of their air defense systems that they rely on the US for. But Iran has been able to ramp up drone production since the Ukraine invasion and really made the mainstay of its assaults on Israel as well as the GCC. We could be seeing a time when the GCC countries in the days and weeks ahead actually run out of Patriot missiles, leaving their air defense systems wide open to attack from Tehran's drones.
Now, I wanted to talk about operational transfer. What unique battle-hardened insights does the Ukrainian team bring to the U.S. bases in Jordan that Western military advisors might currently lack?
Well, really what Ukraine has been able to pioneer is a multi-layered defense model, which is it does not deploy expensive Patriot missiles and expensive air defense systems to be able to take down drones now. It uses artillery, electronic warfare, and most importantly, it's been able to develop and deploy cheap counter-drone technology that's able to impact incoming drones at a similar cost ratio to what the drone manufacturers are producing these for. So actually, the multi-layered approach, the ability to produce and deploy this technology at scale in theater during live fire is actually completely unique to Ukraine.
And now, what about the Iranian strategy? Now, given the scale of the recent attacks, over 1,000 drones in 5 days, is the goal of Operation Epic Fury purely physical destruction, or is it a calculated move to bankrupt and exhaust Western defense stockpiles?
It's almost certainly that the barrage of attacks that we are seeing has a political calculus, that potentially the air defense systems in the GCC countries will potentially be impacted and they could start to have real physical damage in those countries. That could bring real geopolitical and diplomatic pressure on Israel and America to be able to cease their own attacks on Iran. So it is a calculated measure to try and force the hand of the Israelis and the Americans to enter into a ceasefire agreement.
And now, regarding geopolitical alliances, Ukraine is now actively defending U.S. interests in the Middle East while fighting its own war at home. How does this security export change Kyiv's leverage when asking for further Western military aid?
Undoubtedly, it helps. It helps that Ukraine has active knowledge and is an active partner in being able to counter some of these attacks. But it's clearly overshadowed, actually, by the spike in oil prices that we've seen over the past week and potentially could be quite prolonged. Any diplomatic leverage, I think, will be eclipsed by the financial gain that the Russian economy will gain from barrels of oil now peaking over $100, potentially even $150 if the Straits of Hormuz closes like it's reported to be. So while there is leverage and while there is what we classify as drone diplomacy, really the impact on Ukraine and the impact on Russia far outweighs any diplomatic potential gain in the short term.
And now you're a specialist in cyber security. How much of this drone threat is a software battle, specifically regarding GPS jamming and electronic warfare, rather than just kinetic interception?
Absolutely. What we see now is that drone warfare, electronic warfare is highly integrated, including with cybersecurity as well. These are what we classify as the spectrum of effects and the spectrums of warfare that can be now deployed. So yes, it is not just a hardware battle, it's a software battle, it's a drone battle, and it's a cyber battle as well. It's pertinent that the US and the Israeli strikes deliberately targeted Iran's headquarters for cyber operations in the very, very early days. So this is not just about physical kinetic strikes against traditional targets. This is about full spectrum warfare.
Zelenskyy has said that Ukraine has received 11 requests for assistance in countering drones fired by Iran from countries neighboring Iran, as well as partners in the US and Europe. What does this tell us about Ukraine's expertise?
It tells us what many of us in the defense and security community already knew, which is Ukraine is a first-class, world-class warfighter, and that actually it's been pioneering the techniques of the 21st century, not just in drone warfare, but also in cyber and many other domains. And actually, rather than it lagging behind European contemporaries, it's actually at the very, very forefront of 21st century warfare. Its expertise are world class, and there is a growing demand for those expertise across the world.
And are you able to tell us how many drones Iran is able to produce a month? Is it about 10,000 Shahed drones per month? And what challenges does this pose for Gulf states and their partners?
I think the estimates put it around 10,000 potentially a year, so not as 10,000 a month, but certainly the key thing is they can almost certainly produce more drones than there are Patriot missiles available. Global production of Patriot missiles is around 800 a year, and nearly every modern European country and GCC country and Ukraine is trying to get hold of American supply of Patriot missiles. Almost certainly, while the production capacity of Iran's Shaheeds is classified, it's almost certainly far outstrips the available Patriot missile systems that are able to shoot it down in these countries that don't have advanced anti-drone warfare techniques.
And now with Ukraine providing support for the conflict in the Middle East, what does this mean for Ukraine as a country at war with Russia, still needing support and interceptors?
Yeah, so undoubtedly we're going to be seeing a supply squeeze. Not only that, but what we really care about, I think, for Ukraine is the attention deficit. The crisis in the Middle East is drawing the attention from America, American public opinion, Europe, European allies, the deployment of hardware into the Middle East, and a potential looming economic crisis, which is forcing America's and European hands not in Ukraine's favor. It's notable that sanctions were lifted against India using Russian oil to try and stave off a potential oil crisis and the potential oil supply shock. So yes, while Ukraine is a key part of the geopolitical attention, almost certainly for the foreseeable future, in the short to medium term, this crisis in the Middle East is little more than a disaster for Kyiv.
And just taking a step back and looking at the broader picture, how do these interceptor drones change the traditional air defense model?
Well, really, it's about cost. So we expect that a Shahed typically would cost around $20,000 to $50,000 to be made. The ones that are used by Russia are actually being made under license, and they're made in places like Tatarstan. So they've been able to produce at scale, en masse, and cost around $20,000 to $50,000. Now, a Patriot intercept missile typically might cost an order of magnitude in the region of hundreds of thousands of dollars, or potentially some of the more advanced systems might be shots around $5 million. So clearly there is an issue of the economics of air defense when you're having to use missile systems designed for ballistic missiles that cost millions of dollars against Shahed drones that cost tens of thousands of dollars. It's actually quite surprising how much doctrine has not changed in some of these countries that have not been clearly observing what's been happening in Ukraine and not been upgrading their air defense systems, because the very worst time to be upgrading your air defense doctrine is when there are thousands of missiles in the sky coming down into your airspace.
Absolutely. And just a final question. Ukraine has sent drone experts with interceptors to Jordan. Are there any more details available in general, and also why Jordan in particular?
Currently, details are quite sparse, but it's safe to say that Jordan is one of the most strategically important areas to defend. It's a key ally in the region, and it's undoubtedly a key center for being able to keep air traffic and air lanes open, potentially on the Ukrainian southern front, as well as into Europe and the wider Middle East. So it's a critical part of the US and the NATO defense ecosystem, which is why Ukraine and its advice is going where it's most needed.
Okay, William James Dixon of the Royal United Services Institute, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for World Talks. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.